Welcome to probably one of the best sessions of the event.
Definitely.
Some of the people that worked with told me that after this session, you probably don't need to attend any other sessions because we'll have made Gen AI work for you. We're really excited about the format of the session because we hope it's going to be a collaborative session. We have an incredible panel here, and they're going to introduce themselves in a little bit. But before we do that, I want to make sure we go over kind of what we are trying to accomplish by the time we're done here. So I'm Bruno Aziza. I'm a senior operating partner at Capital G. And I've been in the data space my entire life. I've worked at Google Cloud before this. I was running outbound product management for Google Cloud. And before that, I worked at companies like Microsoft, Oracle. I did a few startups as well. The idea of this panel is really to make sure that you get the most out of our esteemed panelists. And so what we will do as we go through the questions, I will turn to you. We have great people that have mics as well. So don't hesitate. If there's something in a particular topic that you want to ask about, this is really the opportunity. Of course, we don't hope to solve all the problems in 45 minutes, but we hope to actually get you all to participate. So what we're going to do now, I'm going to turn over to the next panelist, going to start introducing themselves in a little bit. And then before we go into the questions, I do want to warn you, I'm going to do a selfie with all of you and the panelists, so just adjust your jacket, start to smile, because you'll be in the photo as well. That's what we're going to do over the next 45 minutes. And so let's just kick it off. Wow, it's pretty loud when I go like this. I guess it's, when we go to Will, tell us a little bit about you and your company.
Hey, awesome, thank you. So like you, I've been in the data space for a long time, probably close to 30 years now. You can tell by my gray hair, that's probably why you and Chris shave it off, right? And my love for data and AI started very early. So in the 90s, as you may remember from the car cast, I did some work building and training neural networks. It was obviously very early days then. But if I look sort of across these 30 years, I'd have to say this job here is probably my favorite. Because basically what I do is I meander around the world, talking to super smart people about how to maximize the value of their data. And this really comes down to sort of three factors, and that is accessibility, quality, and freshness. Now those three things, I think we can all acknowledge that's been important for some time, but I think AI, this huge adoption, has compounded that multiple times, right? Because if you don't have any data, you don't have any AI. And if you send garbage in, you're going to get garbage out. And I think specifically as it relates to Confluent, which many of you probably know as the data streaming company or the commercial entity behind Apache Kafka and Apache Flink, what I love about it is sort of like Google is the most open cloud. We sort of view ourselves as the Switzerland of data, right? Because our value is all about taking valuable business data and then delivering it to whatever tools they want to use. And this panel is a great representation. So in AI, it's pretty common that data gets sent to Mongo and Databricks and Dataiku, Vertex AI, or whatever. So pretty cool job. Not as cool as yours, but I like it.
Thank you. Let's go to Chris now.
Good. Hi, everyone. I'm Chris D'Agostino. I'm the global field CTO for Databricks. Been with Databricks for about 4.5 years now and joined them after running and leading data transformation at Capital One. So at Databricks, similar to Will, I'm traveling quite a bit and meeting with customers and helping them with their overall data and AI strategy. At Capital One, I had the experience of being able to go from on-prem data center environments, taking Hadoop, SAS, and Teradata, decommissioning those platforms and moving into a cloud-based approach, and that's where I met the founders of Databricks. Prior to that, I've been in the industry for about 30 years as well. Prior to that, I was running a software company that did counterterrorism software. So it was a big data solution built on Hadoop and some other open source big data technologies that tried to disambiguate different people on the planet and figure out who they were and where they might be. And with Databricks, you know, it's been an amazing 4.5 years. I'm sure most of the people in the audience have heard about the company. It's raised an incredible amount of money, just over $4 billion to scale the business up. We now have over 10,000 customers, and As you may be aware, our platform runs on all the major cloud providers. We're here, of course, at Google, and great partnership with them. And the underpinnings of the platform are built on these very popular open source projects, Apache Spark being sort of the most notable. Running on Google has been just a great partnership for us. The mic seems to keep going in and out, but apologies for that. With Google, it's just been a great partnership, and during the talk, we'll talk a little bit about some of the companies that we're partnered with on the Google platform.
So we're doing professional introductions here, but if you haven't caught the teaser that we recorded before the session over the weekend, you also find out that this group of panelists is a lot of fun. So I really want to encourage you, after the session, reach out to them and watch that teaser. In fact, the next person is going to introduce themselves. She joined the teaser from her car with both her kids in the back. And it was a lot of fun to do that. First time I do a CarCast every weekend. It's the first time I had kids in the CarCast. So thanks, Erin, for doing that. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Erin McGowan. I'm the Global VP of Solutions Engineering at Dataiku. I've been at Dataiku 3+ years now. I've been in the technology space 10+ years, but previous to that, I was in industry, life sciences and healthcare plans. I was a data scientist by training. Got into the tech space because I loved how technology could help data science teams, data engineering teams collaborate with the business. A big thing for me is with Dataiku, have the ability to be able to collaborate across multiple different user personas, whether you're a coder or you're a business analyst. And so for those that don't know Dataiku, it's a cloud-native collaborative AI platform that allows you to seamlessly integrate with your cloud data infrastructure as well as your AI services. So really getting the most out of your AI initiatives.
All right, that's for Erin. One more person who's shared their success making chutney, I think it was. So you'll have to go and check out that teaser for that. But tell us a little bit about you, Andrew.
Thank you. Hey, folks, I'm Andrew Davidson, SVP of Products at MongoDB, and really excited to be here today. You know, for many years, we've really focused on helping our customers build modern applications. And what we really focus on is the core of those applications have an operational data layer. That's where we fit in, that transactional, real-time data layer. And if you think about why it is that people use MongoDB for that layer, it's a bunch of things. It's scalability and uptime. But at its core, it's about the data model. MongoDB's data model allows you to, with polymorphism and flexibility, express the fidelity of the real world. And that's really important at a time in which ground truth and being able to reflect ground truth in your data is so important. Now, in a time of so much change, as we're seeing over the last couple of months and the last 2 years or so, every month a new framework, a new LLM, amazing building blocks. I think my point to you all would be that if anything is clear, it's that the operational data layer is a rock that you can rely on, and you're going to need to build around that. So our philosophy is one of open composability. We want you to be able to build on the hyperscaler of your choice. Google Cloud's a fantastic option. The LLM is of your choice. Vertex, great service for that. And all of the frameworks as they continue to rise up and evolve, but having that ability with your operational data layer, including first-class, elegantly integrated vector search in MongoDB Atlas, that's our focus, and we're very excited about the intelligent applications that people are starting to build.
All right, well, let's get going, but like I said, you're also part of this session, so I'm going to kick it off with the selfie here. I guess it's called a Wi-Fi, I guess, if we're all in it. If you, I'm going to try not to fall off the stage. That'd be a terrible way to do that. Let's see here. Everybody ready to smile? Smile. All right, and I apologize in advance to the 10 million people watching this session online. I'm sorry that you can't be on here. We only have 10,000 people in this room, I think, or something like that. All right, so we've got a few topics picked, of course, in the order of questions. But like I said, as I go through these questions, think about the question you have. Because the whole idea is this is your session. We're doing this for you. All right, so we'll start with the first question, which is around culture. So it's a pretty wide question when you think about making GenAI work. How do you think about culture? Many of you are betting your career on certain technology. And so the first thing I'd say is that when you look at research in the market, it's actually research from SiliconANGLE that was published over the weekend, they found that about 70% of organizations have some kind of Gen AI that they're working with, but the ones that don't, they have issues around culture, security, governance, attribution. And so I want to ask the panel here, and we're going to start with Chris, what are the most common roadblocks that you see customers struggle with when they're trying to foster this culture that's conducive to deploying Gen AI at scale?
Yeah, well, I'm going to address this from sort of an enterprise perspective because it's what I saw at Capital One, and we did a lot of things really well there, and it's what I see when I talk to enterprise customers. You know, they talk about the difference between sort of a ground-up, bottom-up approach to some of these new initiatives versus a top-down approach. And really, in order for it to succeed, it's got to be both. The reason why it needs to be both is from the board of directors and the CEO, it is, I think, really their responsibility to help the overall organization understand what the North Star is, where you're trying to head, what the risks are, and to ensure that especially the business units and the key business stakeholders are playing ball and really participating. It's going to happen from the ground up because it's naturally doing that anyway, but there's the terminology of shadow IT that you hear about in large enterprises, and I think the risk that you have, especially with Gen AI, and especially customer-facing Gen AI, is if you're not governing the overall approach properly, if you're not funding it properly, if you're not setting up the organizational structure well enough, then you're going to have different projects that are doing different things that have different results and are likely using different data. And so when you get into Gen AI, especially at an enterprise level, trust is the number one thing to be concerned about, and you need kind of a top-down and bottom-up approach.
And at Capital One, if I remember correctly, $120 million, thousands of people involved in deployment, so definitely orchestrating from the bottom up. Now, Will, I know you're intergalactic, and we're talking about humans here. How do we think about that? We've got this domain IT kind of struggle. What's worked with your customers?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest obstacles that I've seen, and I see this like literally every week, I hear this. I think everyone in the business acknowledges that the domain understands the data the best, like the business domain. Like they know where databases it's in, they know what the schema is, they know when it's going to change, they know what can be shared and what can't. So they're the best position to actually expose that data so you can use your AI models and Gen AI. But the fundamental problem is they're not resourced for it. Like I hear this all the time. We love data products, but by the way, we don't have the time because we're keeping the lights on. We're building apps or doing supply chain optimization. So the companies I've seen that sort of most successfully extracted data and used it for AI projects have adopted this sort of top-down in addition to bottom-up, just like Chris said. And they'll do things like, for instance, have something called a domain engineer. It's called different things, different places. And from a centralized data engineering team, they'll put it on detail into the domain. So this sort of addresses two problems. One is it addresses the resources. Two is it addresses the expertise, which they may or may not have. So producing that high-quality data products as close to the source as possible helps address the trust and quality issues.
And we're going to talk about this role of the data product manager in a little bit. I'm just curious in the audience, how many of you are in IT? Okay, fair amount. And how many of you are on the business domain side? Okay, you got more IT people. You got to go talk to them if you're not sitting next to them. So this domain issue here, sometimes you think about what role do I need to create, right? And Erin, you've learned from your customers that there's something you can do to translate and bridge the gap between those domains and the IT constituents. What did you learn?
Yeah, the business translation is very important. And one of the ways that we're seeing a lot of our customers be able to do this is from a top-down perspective, create data literacy programs, right? So it educates the whole organization on which data to use, the impact of that data, where did it come from. So being able to provide, if you're going to provide access to technology, to LLMs, you have to at least have the background and the education and gone through these data literacy courses that are very specific to that particular customer or organization. And
so the role here as business translator, we've seen this with customers. If you Google Mercado Libre is an organization that went out and hired an enablement team that was not specifically knowledgeable in the topic itself, but was professionally trained to enable people. And they were goaling their IT team on how many people were passing the certification. And so I think this idea of translation is also, and we'll get to talk about the metrics, is also something you want to track down on how much progress you're making. Now, of course, in the US, we've got an election coming up, and I guess one of the last things I was thinking about talking about here is the idea of democracy. Andrew, you're a big believer in data democracy, so tell us a little bit about what's going to happen here in these organizations over the next 8 months.
I'm going to avoid the politics on this, but I'm going to lean a little bit into the bottoms up. I think undoubtedly there needs to be a top-down buy-in to the notion of enabling the bottoms up. Yeah. That has to happen. I would point out to the leaders in the room, if you don't do that, it's going to happen anyway, and it's going to be sort of outside your purview. I think you need to understand people need to get this out of their system and start learning how to put it to use. So, one quick tactic we've seen a lot of validation with ourselves and with our customers is to get Gen AI into your hackathons and just get everyone trying it out. If you don't do it, they're going to do it on their own anyway. But then from there, I would point out that empowering teams to do this right, I'm a little bit more centered perhaps on the line of business than the central data teams. I think both domains matter a lot, but in the line of business, doing this right means empowering software engineers to be complemented increasingly by data people. And I think that this is a great moment to start bringing data people into the two-pizza team. But the reason I mentioned software engineers is I want to underscore the word engineer. We sometimes lose sight of the core discipline of the engineering and talk about developers and whipping out code fast, but remember that engineering as a discipline is about controlling what we're building, measuring, testing, and understanding what we're doing, and making sure that it stays within a controlled set of baseline requirements, use cases delivered, et cetera. Empower your engineers to operate as engineers using these new tools. That's how you're going to be able to build incredible new experiences. You're going to have to be careful. But the beautiful thing about retrieval augmented generation is that it's an easy to understand security model. So you can train your people and you can help them to reason about, with role-based access control, how to put these new tools to use. And you can do it today.
Excellent. All right, so you can start seeing different points of view here. And so think about your questions here that you might have about this topic of culture. And now I'm going to switch to customer examples and specifics on how you measure things. So we definitely want to hear from you here. Culture, often you think about it as fairly nebulous topic, but culture is not what we say, it's what we do. And so how do you measure that you're actually making progress towards this Gen AI work? And so beyond the hype here, Erin, this is a question for you. How you think about customer examples that have delivered this exceptional experience with Gen AI using your technology and Google's technology?
Yeah, great example. A joint customer with GCP is an online retailer out of the UK. M&M is their name. They have they're in 25 countries. They have 300 different brands. Their data science team was struggling with two major issues, right? Data silos in the organization, right? You take 300 different brands. There's issues with accessing data. The second was being able to provide the non-technical users, right? Their team was comprised of coders, but they needed to work with the lines of business to be able to leverage machine learning. So they leveraged GCP and Dataiku to help bridge that gap of collaboration. So they were traditionally building models in code, and they love coding, but they wanted to make sure they could augment that, right? Let's say they're working with the merchandising group, right? So how do they collaborate? How do they provide access to the capabilities through a collaboration layer? So they found with Dataiku and GCP, they could build models 10 times faster, but the real big difference for them was actually in their ML ops and productionalizing those models. They were able to save 3 days a month, right? So the biggest challenge wasn't building the models, it was actually maintaining and productionalizing those models. So that 3 days savings and building 10 times faster, they were able to tackle more use cases. And that was a big productivity gain for them.
So this lab to live process was facilitated. And we'll definitely have a lot more information, the case study and so forth on how you did it. well, I know you have a model on how to assess, so you also have an example of a company, Whatnot, that actually is in Capital G's investment portfolio. So tell us a little bit about that. How do I take an example like that and try to replicate and assess that I'm actually tracking towards the right direction?
Well, I think a lot of times in IT, or especially on the vendor side, we spend a lot of time thinking about TCO and how much faster we can do things or easier, and that's really important. But at the end of the day, it's really about return on investment. Right? If your project's not delivering net new revenue, it's irrelevant how fast you can do something. And I think you'll see varying numbers out there that say AI projects, somewhere between 70 to 90% of the time, they're failures. This means you didn't get a return on investment. It could be you trained a model, spent a bunch of money, never got launched, or maybe you did and it didn't get used. So it's really key to anchor yourself on the net new revenue. So Whatnot's a great example. I mean, if you don't know them, they're sort of like the hipster version of Home Shopping Network or QVC. And the idea is they want to match sellers who have live streams to buyers. And what they were able to show is that by moving essentially the matching algorithm to a machine model in real time, they are actually able to generate significantly more revenue because, of course, the more stuff that people buy, the more money they make, and that's going to happen if they make great matches. So again, anchor yourself to return on investment, net new income, and then it makes it easier, by the way, to get the business stakeholders to fund your next project, right? So
return on investment, return on AI. I think, Chris, you got something about that as well on how you think about assessing as well metrics. Yeah. How do we think about that? Do you agree with that too?
I do. I think when I advise CDOs in my role, one of the things that I brought with me from my past experience before Databricks was the notion of really looking at use cases from an offensive and defensive perspective, and binning the use case in terms of, from an offensive perspective, it's like, how am I going to increase revenue, cut costs, those types of things. The defensive perspective is, what can I do from a data governance and data quality and data security standpoint to ensure that the company doesn't end up on the front page of a major newspaper, right? And so when you think about Gen AI, I think you add another dimension to it, which is internal versus external. And so a good example of that is, see a lot of companies going very aggressively to some external use cases and some traps there. There's a pretty well-known one with Chevrolet, a Chevy dealership, that used ChatGPT or OpenAI and invocation to GPT. And the customer was asking for what pickup truck should that person consider buying, and the response back was a Ford F-150. So not a good experience for a Chevy dealership, right? And so one example is Replit, which is a joint customer between Databricks and GCP, which is a cloud-based IDE. So it's an integrated development environment, helping people learn how to write code. It has an astonishing number of users. It has 20 million subscribers that are using the platform in order to author code. And we're seeing this where they used the Mosaic components of the Databricks platform to train their own LLMs to help individual subscribers learn how to write and improve the code base. We're seeing lots of LLM work for internally facing work in financial services, where organizations are looking at the legacy COBOL code, can't even say it, it's so old, that code base, and trying to convert it to more modern code stacks. So they're training LLMs to do that conversion. The nice thing about both of these use cases is that the individual that's looking at the results from the LLM are the ones that need to verify it, vet it, and maybe improve it or fix anything that went wrong. That's very, very different than if you're giving a response back out to a consumer and then being bound by that response from a legal perspective.
Speaking of development, Andrew, you have a point of view on how Gen AI could benefit developers and examples around that.
Yeah, I mean, it is an amazing moment that, in a way, software development itself is being disrupted by these tools, and also we can start building more intelligent applications. So it's this duality. If I sort of think about the digital native companies at the AI vanguard, customers that we've had for a number of years now, they will tell me, and these are people who in many cases got started before the ChatGPT moment, people will tell me that now what they thought was kind of their 5 to 10 year roadmap is now the kind of thing that's 18 months to 3 years. In other words, they've seen this compression in what's possible for them based on the building blocks. This was the sort of shift left moment where everything becomes an API where I can just hit it and use it without having to build it myself, right? And that democratizes it for an order of magnitude more people. So I think the good news for all of us in the enterprise is we can watch what these digital native vanguard AI companies are doing. I'll give you a good example. A customer of ours and Google's is called GoBots AI. They layer into e-commerce sites and basically enable you to have a great experience as a consumer and increase conversion by 42%. They reduce the time to first engagement by 73%. And I would point out, this is sort of like a specific manifestation of a simplistic use case that's possible today because of the limitations and scalability of large language models. When we think about what's going to happen in 3-4 years from now, when you'll be able to run 100 inference calls in under a second, you'll be able to chain them together with more sophisticated agentic workflows, you're going to be able to really bring more and more powerful capabilities into the real-time column and not have it break the bank. So I would just point out, just starting to use these tools and feel like you're on the pulse of starting to mold them, and this gets back to the cooking analogy, molding, flexibly changing. This is the thing that builders do, the artisans of our time. That's where we are today as an industry. It's going to be hard to measure the ROI in this moment. But getting involved now is crucial to make sure that you're not left behind in the future.
Now, some of these companies, might struggle with going all with that because, they might think, okay, who do I need to hire to make sure that I'm doing this right?